Hey everyone, in this short video, I will show you how you can create your own CSS loaders and spinners. After watching this video, you will be able to create your own basic CSS spinners which you can use in your projects. Let's first check out the CSS spinners which I will code and demonstrate in this video. So these are the basic and simple CSS spinners and a single loader which I will show you guys how to create from scratch. They have different colors and different speeds, and the last one is a different animation altogether. So the basic idea behind creating a CSS loader is to first create the HTML elements which we want to animate. We will style them using CSS and then we provide the animation information using the CSS animation properties. Hopefully you will learn enough from these basic examples to move on to more complex stuff. Also, if you like this video, then please don't forget to place a like and click the subscribe button. Let's now start creating the CSS spinners and loaders which I just showed you guys. This is Visual Studio Code and over here it is an empty HTML file. Let's first add some HTML contents to it and we will also need to run it first, and I'm going to do that using the live server extension. This extension is pretty useful because we can simply save our changes over here and the changes will be automatically reloaded in this browser window which is opened over to the side. Now for the first CSS spinner, we will need to add an HTML element which is going to be a div, and let's also add a class for it. And I'm going to set the class name as my awesome spinner 1 because we are going to have 3 spinners. And now let's just copy this class name, and now we need to create this class in the style element. So my awesome spinner 1, and let's also save the changes first. So the first order of our business over here is to style this element first and then apply the animations which we want to use for our spinner. So let's first set the border value which is going to be 5px and solid, and the color is going to be gray. Let's set the height and also the width. So for the height I'm going to use 20px and same for the width also. I'm going to set the border top value as 5px and solid, and the color is going to be gold. And now the last thing that we need to do to style our spinner is to set the border radius so that it will turn into a circle. So border radius, and I'm going to set the radius as 50%. Okay, right, so now our styling for the spinner has been done, and now it's time to animate it. For animation, first we need to create a keyframe section. So for the identifier we are going to use the name as rotate. So keyframes specify the movement or the starting or intermediate and ending positions of our HTML elements when we are animating them using the animation properties. So for this spinner we need to rotate it. So first we will set the initial rotation which is going to be a rotation transform. So let's just create a transform function rotate, and it is going to be 0 degree because the initial position needs to be at 0 degree. And for the 100% we are going to use 360 degree because we want to rotate this spinner all the way. So this is why we are going to use the initial rotational degree as 0 and the final rotational degree as 360. So now we have our keyframe, and now it's time to add the animation properties. There are essentially two ways in which we can use the CSS animation properties. The first one is to write the animation properties individually, and the second way is to write a single animation property like we do for border, and then provide all the animation parameters that we want to use separated by using a white space. But for this example, first I'm going to write them individually. So let's first provide the animation name. So animation name is the name of the keyframe which we just created, and it is the rotate. The name is rotate. The second one is the animation duration, and the duration is going to be let's say 0.5 seconds. So the duration is the value with which this element is going to complete its one iteration. So the amount or the value which we are going to put over here is the time that it will take to complete one iteration. So to rotate one cycle, it is going to do that in 0.5 seconds. If I will let's say put 2 seconds over here, then it will take 2 seconds to complete one rotation, but we need it to be fast, so that is why we are going to put 0.5 seconds. The next property that we are going to use is the iteration count. So iteration count specifies the number of times this animation is going to repeat itself. So we want this animation to play indefinitely, so this is why we will use the value infinite, and now this animation will keep on playing. The last animation property that we are going to use is the timing function. So we are going to set the timing function as linear, and you must be thinking what a timing function is. So timing function specifies the way in which the animation is going to progress through each of its iterations. For this spinner, I'm going to use the value linear. So now it is smooth, and you can see how this spinner is rotating, and now it's ready to use. Now let's create two more spinners by providing variation to their values. I am just going to copy this class from over here, and let's just name it my awesome spinner 2, and we will also create another div element which is going to use this the second class. Now I'm going to introduce some changes over here. The first change which I'm going to introduce is to add a bottom border to change the visual appearance of this second spinner, and let's just change the color as red. And the second thing which I will do over here is to change the animation duration. So I'm going to set it at 1 second by keeping everything same. Now right now the animation properties are provided individually. We can provide them in a single animation property. What we can do is we can provide all of these values by separating them using a white space. So rotate is the name, and 1 second is the duration, and linear is the timing function, and infinite is the iteration count. And we will not need all of these individual properties, so this is a shorthand approach which is pretty convenient to use. So there you go, our second spinner has been finished, and now it's time to create a third one. And in this I'm going to add another border. So this time let's add left one and actually right one too. So let's set the color as green, and you know what, let's set this color as blue. And let's also change the duration of our animation. We will also need to change the class name, and let's have another div. So our spinners have been finished. So you see how easy it is to create CSS spinners out of scratch. We don't need to really waste our time looking on the internet if we just want to use simple spinners in our project. Let's now create a final CSS loader, and this CSS loader will not be limited to a single HTML element, and you will see how we can combine multiple HTML elements to create more complicated loaders and spinners. So the first thing that I will do is I will create a parent div, and inside it I will add 3 more divs. Okay, now it's time to provide their styling information. So I'm going to add 3 classes for these 3 divs and another class for this parent div. So let's just call this parent div as my awesome circle container, and this parent div is only going to have a single property which is the width, and let's set the width as 100px. And you will see why this width is going to be useful in a moment. Now it's time to provide the classes for these 3 divs. So let's first set the class value for this one. Now the class names that I am going to use for these 3 divs is my awesome circle 1, 2 and 3. And let's just change the values 1, 2 and 3. All right, first let's create the class for this first div, and my awesome circle 1. First we need to set the display of this div as block, and let's set the float value as left. The background color is going to be gray, and the border radius is again going to be 50% because we need a circle over here, so 50%. Let's set the height and width. So height is going to be 10px and width is also going to be 10px. Okay, so this is our circle. This is the single div out of the 3 divs which we have created. And now it's time to provide the animation information. For that, first we will create the keyframe element, and let's just provide the name as slide because we are going to slide this circle left and right. First we need to provide the initial value, so this can be done by providing from and then margin left and providing a value at 0px. So this means that at initial position the margin left is going to be 0px, and the final position of this animation is going to be when the margin left is going to be 60px. Also keep in mind that we need to take into consideration the width of the parent container because these divs need to be contained inside this div. Now let's provide the animation, only animation property. So the name of the animation keyframe is slide, and let's provide the duration as 1.5 seconds, and we need to alternate it left and right, and this needs to run indefinitely, so we will use infinite. So the first div is animating, and now let's provide the classes for the other two, and let's just rename them as 2 and 3. So right now this entire thing is messed up and we need to change some things. First and foremost, we don't really need to make any change for these classes. Only we need to create another the keyframe section because we need to change the to value for the remaining 2 divs. So let's just name it slide 1 and slide 2, and we will also rename this name over here, and the second and third div are going to use slide 2, but the first div is going to use slide 1. And now for the second and third div, for the margin left value we need to set 5px because this margin is going to be the margin between these divs. So for the first div, the margin is the space between this parent div and the first div, but for the second and third divs this margin space is going to be between those divs. So that is why we need to set the margin value not as 60px but as 5px because this is the most further that these divs will get from each other. Let's also provide the border over here so that you can see that these divs are alternating between the bounds of their parent div. So let's set the border as 1px solid, and then let's use black over here, and also let's use overflow as hidden. All right, so now you can see that these divs or these circles are alternating inside this parent container, but we will need to hide this border in order for this loader to be to look meaningful enough to be of any use in our project. And that is how you can create simple and complex spinners and loaders. Now these are very basic spinners and you are just limited by your own imagination and creativity to create more complex ones. And with that, I'm going to take my leave from this video. Be sure to like this video if you think it is helpful for you, and also subscribe to this channel. Till we meet in the next video, have a great time.